Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. It is being put on by Improving in collaboration with Google Cloud. My name is Sergey Vershinin, and I'm a technical director and Google practice lead at Improving. And over to you, Rob.
Hey everybody, my name is Rob Harper. I'm a customer engineer at Google Cloud. I'm based out of Toronto. My focus is the public sector. I should make that clear as well, since this is a public sector webinar. Over to you, Sergey.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to share my screen and present some slides. Um, there we go. Um, all right. So, apologies, just getting my windows sorted. Um, so today's conversation will center on agentic AI for public sector. We will do a bit of an intro, go over some use cases, and then look at going beyond conversational AI. And if time allows, we'll do a bit of a dive into agentic architecture and what's involved in having AI be deployed in your organization and how to get there so that you can reap the benefits. Um, Improving is a modern digital services firm. We provide all manner of technical consulting services focused on app modernization, data integration, data analytics, and of course, AI, which is why we're here. We are active across North and South America and India, and in Canada in particular, we're present in Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. In terms of our public sector expertise, just very quickly, we focus on onboarding enterprises to the Google Cloud Platform, making sure that the process is secure and compliant. We also specialize in automating document processing workflows, something that I'll speak about in more length shortly after this slide. Um, we also do quite a bit of cloud native application development as well as a variety of data engineering and data analytics work. Just a little wall of logos. We have quite a bit of experience working with the public sector, especially in Canada, um, on Google in particular, and more broadly with a variety of public sector and government entities across North America. Now, moving on to the main topic for the webinar, AI use cases and demos. Now, Improving's expertise in AI/ML span the full gamut of sort of more traditional machine learning, as well as the sort of state-of-the-art AI, especially the sort that my colleague Rob will speak to in his part of this webinar. But in terms of specifics that Improving has experience delivering, we have quite a bit of expertise in deploying document AI. It's a Google technology focused on automating document processing. So, if essentially turning lots of unstructured data into structured data, bypassing the more traditional data entry that, if manual, can be very time consuming and error prone. Additional technologies that we're familiar with and have provided as part of solutions to customers include the Sensitive Data Protection API. That is a suite of tools that Google Cloud offers for redacting personally identifiable information. This can be very useful in scenarios such as redaction for freedom of information type releases or disclosure. It can also be used in an operational sort of data delivery mode where, let's say, you have a database in your organization that has some information that another part of the organization would like to access, but you're not allowed to share the personal information pieces. So you can actually leverage Sensitive Data Protection API to anonymize and mask the sensitive info while at the same time providing governance and ready access to data in other parts of the organization. Finally, another AI technology that may not immediately come to mind when thinking about AI is search. I mean, I think the conversation piece is quite common with chatbots, but the modern large language models have actually greatly enhanced natural language search, and Google has state-of-the-art technology available for implementing these types of features across a wide variety of verticals and use cases, which includes a specialized version of the service for healthcare, dealing with patient files, as well as for commerce, where it is revenue optimized, something that we're fairly used to seeing in a variety of kind of online retail settings. Um, and of course, this can also be very useful in the public sector setting, be it with internally facing tools to enable your employees to effectively access a variety of documents in a conversational type mode. And I will show a demo of this, as well as generally provide high quality search capabilities across your enterprise assets. And finally, we do have experience integrating um, generative AI models and other AI ML tooling that Google Cloud provides into solutions as required by the customer. So, as I had mentioned, I've got some demos to show because showing is always better than telling. The three that I will show today will include the smart forms processing demo, natural language search, as well as an open data search agent, which is kind of like an example of a highly customized agent that you can surface in Google Enterprise, formerly known as Agent Space. So, whoops, let me switch to how to present mode into the demo for Doc AI. Now, Document AI, the core of the technology is their document parsers, which can be trained on a variety of materials that you typically do data entry with. And then it is able to essentially recognize the fields from those forms as um, you require, regardless of whether this is a handwritten note or it's a digital document or a digitized document where it's essentially like a JPEG inside a PDF or something. In this case, the demo is tuned on some regulatory submission documents. This is synthetic data, but essentially, um, this is a human validation, human in the loop validation interface for a process that was largely automated. We had a client who had a significant backlog of these forms that were being submitted, and they didn't have the resources to input them. So what we had done is trained document AI parsers to process them automatically. And this UI was developed so that documents that were ranked as potentially having a lower confidence in the information being identified could be validated manually by a human. Sometimes you will want this, especially for input of consequential information that requires sort of that additional layer of oversight. So I'm just going to randomly pick a synthetic form and upload it, and it is being processed. which shouldn't take particularly long. In fact, it probably takes less time than it will to show up on the UI simply because there's a little bit of back-end signaling that has to happen. And we're ready for review. And if you click through on the right-hand side, what the user sees is a medical form, well, a submission form with a bunch of synthetic information here. Um, as you can imagine, manually entering this, especially if this submission was done um, in a manner where this was filled out on paper and scanned or some other means. And also what we had to do in this case is the form wasn't standard. It was the fields that were supposed to be there um, were specified, but there were a few versions of it floating around. And so submissions were somewhat heterogeneous. It wasn't always the exact same file. So Doc AI can be adapted to deal with this. And as a result, you can see that essentially all of this information from the form is ingested, and essentially the even entries that are just multi-line entries are broken out and saved in their respective fields. So essentially, this kind of document to structured data process is concluded. And um, if you find something that isn't as it should be, let's say the number is off. I mean, I don't believe it is off, but yeah, so the number is correct. But let's say it was. This type of UI that we develop for the customer allows you to make the changes, save them as required, go get a coffee, come back, and then eventually mark it as verified, which essentially pushes the information. Um, and the end result being is you actually automate a significant pain point within your business process. And what we were able to do in this particular engagement is process about 10 years worth of a backlog in approximately 8 hours with a very high degree of reliability and data quality. So this may not look like some of the exciting newer AI technology that we will cover later. However, I think the public sector is often a document and information heavy industry, and I think folks can appreciate the value of having a system that creates this automated workflow and essentially can save hundreds of hours in aggregate, if not thousands, that essentially take cost out of executing certain business processes and allow for feeding of high quality data into whatever other processes you might have in your company. Now, as promised, the other piece was natural language search. And this is an example of a demo that we developed for the Officer of the Auditor General of Canada. Um, it is an implementation of Vertex AI search and conversation over the OAG's direct engagement manual. In conversation with OAG, they were curious for a use case where auditors are usually specialized, and let's say within your organization, somebody wanted to get up to speed on an area or a type of audit work that they're not familiar with. Similarly, this in HR could be used for training or other sort of verticals. So here we're dealing with a manual that describes different types of audit processes, and you can ask questions such as, how do I audit a grants and contributions program? And by searching, what Vertex AI search does is essentially index your collection of documents and allow you to interrogate it, do searches, and have a variety of things that come back to you, such as kind of a summary of what it has been found. And the summaries are grounded in the sources that it looked to gather the information for the summary. The results themselves can be presented in a variety of ways. This is a custom UI to kind of show an example of what this could look like. But obviously, because it's custom, improving would be able to modify this as required. The service itself provides a variety of ways to interact with it, including follow-up questions. So let's say um, leveraging past audit work is so um, okay, so we continue the conversation and ask how does the OAG leverage past uh, audit oops, work? Let me just continue the conversation. And unlike a traditional search engine where you just completely new query, here it will take into account the previous sources and essentially provide a summary of how that question in the context of the first question can be answered. And there's a variety of additional links. Um, and you can, of course, click through to the originals, which themselves would be brought up. Now, this could be a separate website or it could be integrated into the same search UI. In short, these are great examples of leveraging AI ML tech in ways that may not be immediately sort of linked to conversational chatbots, etc., that we often think of. However, they leverage a lot of the same advantages. For example, in Doc AI, generative AI models have been used to speed up the training of document parsers um, so that you don't have to have as many examples for the system to function well in extracting the information you're interested in. So with this, I'm going to hand the presentation piece over to my colleague Rob, who will speak about some other AI tech that Google's been putting on the Google Cloud Platform.
Great. Thanks, Sergey. Um, I'm going to take over presenting, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and then I can more easily jump to demos and so on, like you did. All right. I presume I'm sharing, Sergey. You see it?
You're
Okay.
good.
Amazing. Thank you for those are two excellent examples of AI in practice and really being able to bring value in two different, very unique and very different ways. What I want to start with talking about is sort of the way that a lot of us use AI, and our first introduction to AI is often through a chatbot. It's through something, we go in our web browser and we start chatting and we ask it to tell us a joke, and then we think it's funny, and then we start learning how to use these things to create real value. Take this document and summarize it, or help me perfect the language in this email to be more professional before I send it. Things like that. And these are really powerful use cases of AI. But what it essentially starts to happen over time is that you'll find yourself, as you use this sort of chat paradigm more and more, that you often do some of the same things. That a lot of the time, the work that you're asking it to do, you're telling the instructions to the AI agent again and again and again, to be able to do these things because they're giving you high value. And so, what I want to start with talking about is how we can move from sort of this chat paradigm to a paradigm where we encode a lot of this information, how I want the task to be completed. What are all the guidelines? I want you to summarize this document, but I want to start with an executive summary. Then I want the key action items listed as bullet points, whatever those things are. Um, you know, how do we take that and make it easier to employ that and to be able to just click a single button and have that done for us? And then we do that is something that you all came here to see, and that is by employing AI agents. So I want to start with a demo right off the top, and that is taking a fairly simple use case, but one that illustrates a couple of powers of being able to use a really powerful large language model like the Google Gemini model with the sort of the agentic approach. And so imagine that one of my roles at the organization is to take incoming things like in a mailroom or documents or packages that are being received by the organization, and I need to make sure that they're properly categorized and that they're scanned and then they're dispatched off to the final department where they're supposed to go. And so one of the tasks that I may have is looking at these things and ensuring that I have all the information I need from them. And some of the times that's looking at things like, is that package damaged? Does it need to be returned? Do we need to do sort of engage insurance in any way? And so if you think about what that might look like, I could certainly sit down and do that job myself. Or I could take a photo of that package and I could give a large language model, go into Gemini.google.com and type out the instructions that you see here on the slide and give it these instructions day after day. Or what I could do is I could package this into an AI agent and use that agent to do that work for me. So I'm going to switch my share to look at something else, which is a demo. So as I was saying, you could use a situation like this where I start typing in the instructions. I want you to do this, and here are the criteria, and so on, and then add a file for it to analyze and move forward. But an easier approach is to take those workflows that I'm commonly doing and encoding them into a reusable process, which I've done here with a little package evaluation agent. I'm going to come back and talk about the interface we're looking at here in a second. But first, I just want to show you how this works in principle. So what I can do now is I've encoded all of the information, all of the rules and regulations and standard operating procedures around package receipt at my organization. I've encoded that into this agent. And now if I just upload a file, I'll take a nice package. The package looks like this. So it's clearly nicely damaged, but it does have a label and so on. And just upload that package without giving any instructions. The agent is able to take the standard operating procedure, take the factors that I need it to consider, and create a report. And the reason I chose this one is because it's a little bit more interesting than something like a document summarization one, which is pure text. This is actually using visual reasoning and sort of illustrates the value of having a model that's able to do more than just deal with text and able to understand the context that it sees in an image. So for example, we can see we've got red tape with fragile printed on it and so on. There's visual damage. We can see the fragile tape is cut and peeled away. And so this packaging material, external markings, and visible damage are all the categories that I needed to put into whatever system is downstream in my organization. And finally, a damage classification. So by doing this, I save myself a lot of typing and I can just reuse this again and again. And if Sergey joins me in the mailroom, then maybe I can give this agent to Sergey and we can both use it. And so we're taking the same approach to the same problem and we're being able to sort of encode that organizational knowledge that I have in my head into a process that's reusable. Yeah, I'm going to jump back. You're going to see me jump around a lot because we're going to go into slide share mode and we're going to go to demos and so on. But what I want to do before we get back into like the details of agents, I want to double click into sort of one of the problem statements that we're trying to address here. And one of the key ways that AI and agents are different in their enterprise landscape than you might use in sort of the consumer landscape, that idea going to Gemini to Google.com and doing, asking it to help plan a trip for the summertime in your family, is that in the enterprise, data is a lot messier. The workflows are more complex. The package workflow I showed you is fairly simple, but there's a lot of much more complex workflows, much more complex situations. In the consumer landscape, you tend to use things individually. I'm just using it for myself. In an organizational enterprise landscape, I'm going to be using it with a team. I might be sharing agents, sharing information, relying on shared information. And one of the reasons that enterprises struggle using AI and really unlocking the potential is because of the fragmented data platforms. We've got some data over here in SharePoint. I've got other data in Google Drive. I've got other data in SAP, other in Salesforce, others in ServiceNow, and I have all of this information spread across the organization. On top of that, we've got access permission issues. Maybe I have to log in using different credentials into different systems. And some of that information has become out of date. And so what we found is that 80% of organizations' most valuable data tends to be unstructured. It's not the databases, it's not the well-structured stuff, it's the documents, it's the presentations, and the images. And 70% of organizations are struggling with the very unification and governance needed to make AI real. And this isn't a technology problem, really. It's a business problem that directly impacts your ability to innovate and see return on AI investment. So I want to go back to agents and talk a little bit of what they are and what agents need. So if you think about an AI agent, you might think, well, it's just a large language model. It's just Gemini is the agent. Well, Gemini and the large language models sort of form the basis of it, but an AI agent needs a lot more than just the large language model itself, as we saw with that package scanning application. We needed to be able to autonomously achieve a goal on behalf of the user. So my goal was assess this package, or my goal is summarize this document, extract the key action items, and send an email to the team that outlines what those action items are that we discussed. It needs instructions on how to do those things, where to get the information, what to do with it, and sort of that standard operating procedure or the policies I was talking about with the shipping agent. It needs to be able to use tools, access documents, potentially compose emails, and even send emails. And then finally, it needs the knowledge. It needs the information like that, the procedures around package receipt and damage that it can use to be able to wrap all that into something useful. So if you think of it this way, the large language model, Gemini, is sort of like the engine, whereas the AI agent is the entire car. It's all of the other pieces that actually make it useful. So if I were to sort of belabor that car analogy even further, and we zoom out from an individual agent and we think about how do we use agents and how do we deploy agents and actually make them useful within our enterprise, we need a few more things. We need governance around the agents. We need to make sure that those agents have the right restricted permissions to do the things that makes them useful and not things that could potentially make them destructive. We need to make sure that we don't have a sprawl of random agents doing random things automatically within our organization. We want to be able to understand and scope those agents to be able to do things that are useful. And then we need an operating system. We need something on which those agents are going to run. They're not going to run just on my browser. They're not going to run on my computer. We need a place to host them so that we can actually have that governance, the monitoring, the quality assurance, and so on. And so to really take that car analogy further, imagine the operating system. If the agent's your car, the operating system is sort of the road network. It's the places that the car can drive, the thing that supports cars and the infrastructure around cars, and the governance being the traffic laws and the things that make sure that vehicle and everyone else using their vehicles are behaving in a way that's productive and valuable to our organization. And then the last thing I want to say about agents before we move past this point is that on top of all of this stuff, one of the things that we need to be able to use agents is we need a way to actually work with them. We need a way to say, this is the data I want you to connect to. This is the way that I want you to be able to operate. This is the way I want you to be able to help me in my work. This is the way I want to be able to use the agent. It's sort of the user interface, the user experience on top of it all. And the way that at Google we've approached that problem is through something called Gemini Enterprise. So Gemini Enterprise is that entire package that I was talking about. It is that operating system. It is that single pane of glass that we use to be able to interact with that agent. And we can look at it as a few key pieces here. The first pillar is the brains. And that is you need at that middle of that diagram I was just showing, it right at the center is that large language model. And you need that really powerful large language model, in our case Gemini, which is able to do very complex reasoning. It's able to understand the context. It's able to reason over using the information given, and it's able to create outputs. Those could be text, those could be visuals, those could be slide decks, those could be audio. Whatever the context, you need that really strong pillar in terms of the large language model. On the other side of the three pillars there, the task force, To have an agent, a single agent is great in isolation, but having a suite of agents is even more powerful. And those could be out of the box agents. I'll show you one of those in a second. Those could be third party agents developed by an organization like Improving to be able to come and create something that's highly specialized to your organization to be able to really unlock that value. Or it could be something that you've created yourself. And we'll look at an example of that as well. And then in the middle of that platform is the workbench. And that is the place that we go. That's the single pane of glass. This is the place that I can find agents, I can use chat, and all of it providing value to me. Sitting on top of that context, which is the ability to connect into Microsoft ecosystem, the ability to connect into the Google ecosystem, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Jira, Confluence. The number of icons that I could put down in there is quite extensive. But that's where we get that information from our organization that is used by the agents. Finally, at the very bottom, important, particularly in the public sector, is that governance, that place that we make sure that all of the stuff we're talking about here is secure, it's monitored, it's auditable, it has data sovereignty, the data remains your data. All of that super important layer is also part of the package we're talking about here with Gemini Enterprise. Okay, so I want to jump back to another demo, but before I do, I want to talk about sort of the next step in agents. We looked at the fairly simple agent that was just taking an image of a package and assessing it on some things and giving me a report. But agents can be even more powerful when they can act in much more complex ways. And one of those ways is multi-step reasoning and planning. So imagine that I have a goal, which is I'm a manager of a number of departments. And I want to take the initiatives and strategic plans from each one of those departments. I want to look at them all, and I want to understand whether there's overlap between any of the initiatives that my sub teams are working on so that I can maybe deconflict or maybe make them work together and so on. So it's fairly complex because I need to locate a bunch of different files, each one of the strategic plans from each department. I need to extract data and summarize from each one. So I'm going to go one by one, extracting the data and summarizing. Then I need to look and compare and contrast and be able to find those overlaps. And at the end of that, I need to create whatever the output is. In this case, I just said it was, for example, an email that I might compose to the entire team, illustrating what's found. So you can see that there's a lot of steps that occur in that one in this example agent. So as these agents get more complex, the way that we reason over these tasks requires a little bit more thinking. So I'm going to jump over to another demo, and that is a agent that comes out of the box in Gemini Enterprise. And remember, Gemini Enterprise is sort of that platform, that operating system for agents in the enterprise. And this one is called the Idea Generation Agent. And if you haven't seen it, it's really, really interesting because what it does is given a topic, and the topic that I used was find ways to increase adoption of AI within the public sector and make it easier and more accessible to all. It will take an idea like that and it will go out and it will spin off an agent. For each one, it will generate an idea. Agent number 2, please generate your own idea. Agent number 3, same. And it will create hundreds or even thousands of individual agents that each have their own idea. And then it will get those agents to perform in front of an AI agent panel. And the panel will score each one of those little battles between the two and sort and sort and sort until we see who comes out the winner. Sort of like a chess ranking. If anyone's familiar with ELO scores in chess, it works the same way. So let me switch over my screen share and we'll take a look. Okay. We're back to Gemini Enterprise. So you can see here what I've got is in this idea generation, I was able to generate 109 different independent ideas on how to bring more AI adoption to the Canadian public sector. And you can see each one of those has an ELO rating. So basically, as these agents compete in front of this panel, they're accumulating scores. And so if I go right up to the very top, my top scoring idea, as compared to all of the other ones, is something called the Pan-Canadian AI Trust, Data Trust and Governance Framework, with a very PAN-CAF ADGT acronym that is assigned to it. And so if I click on this idea, it's giving me an overview of what that idea is, as well as a detailed description, how AI is used in this idea, differential privacy, homomorphic encryption, all sorts of stuff. This is a vast, incredibly detailed document around this idea, including negative feedback in terms of things that are not necessarily positive about this idea so that it can be used when we're doing that ranking in front of the panel. And of course, very importantly, all of the references that it took these ideas from in terms of it pulled some information from the D&D CAF data governance framework, for example, when it was developing that idea. And so in this way, you can imagine this entire fleet of agents going out and doing work for you and coming back with a potentially usable result. All right, let's jump back to the slide deck. All right, so this idea generation agent certainly is powerful. It is, fairly complex in terms of the number of agents that it spun up and the logic and the rules around it, and it is pretty useful. But the point that I want to end on here is that the last mile of productivity is very personal. Each one of us has work that is usually hyper specific to us or the people on our team. And so it's possible to have pre-made tools like the idea generation agent that could provide value. But a lot of the stuff that we do as individuals in our jobs sometimes is very specific to us. And what we want to do is enable people to be able to identify those repetitive tasks, like the package task I said earlier, or maybe I have a task that involves my email or my calendar or something very specific to me. Find what those are and identify them and figure out how we can employ agents to be able to make that faster and easier. And one of the ways to do that is democratizing the development of agents. How can we make it so anyone can develop an agent? You don't have to be a programmer. You can be someone who just is an expert in their job, not an expert in AI, not an expert in software development, and be able to create these for yourself. And so one of the really potent areas that we've been developing within Google is the ability to have AI help instruct AI. So I can give it some relatively basic instructions of what I want an agent to do, and it can go out and create a relatively complex agent that allows me to do that. And then I can go and I can evaluate it, see how it does, I can improve it, and when it's ready, I can deploy it and start using it for myself. So let me jump to the last demo I'm going to do before handing it back to Sergey. And that is looking at a fairly simple example still, but just keeping it small for this webinar. But I want to be able to create a invoice scraper. I want to be able to provide an agent with a whole bunch of invoices that have come into my inbox, and I want to get some key details out of those. So it's a little bit more complicated because I want it to work across multiple invoices at once. I want it to get very specific information from them. I want to capture it in a very specific way, maybe a table, maybe a summary, and I want all of that to be done for me. But I don't want to have to worry about all the details of how to instruct a team of agents to be able to do it. So let me switch sharing one more time, and we will go to a demonstration of this. Okay, so I am in the agent gallery within Gemini Enterprise. And I haven't shown you around Gemini Enterprise a lot, but just for the sake of time, one of the key areas is being able to have an entire menu of agents to use. And so I had mentioned the idea generation agent, which you can see right here. There's deep research, some of you might be familiar with, or Notebook LM, a really powerful feature that I haven't really talked about, but I recommend you go out and take a look if you have not heard of it. Give it a quick Google. So these are agents that are given as built by Google and come package ready to use. Now, my organization's created a few. I've got a phone plan shopper and I've got a weather agent. These were created by others in my organization, determined that they're high quality, that they have value to everyone, and they were promoted so that anyone in my organization is able to use them. Then I've got a bunch of agents that I've created down here. I've got my package evaluation one you saw earlier, and I've got one that is meant for processing invoices, what the task I was just describing. We're going to look at it in a second, but I want to show you how I create it. I can just click create an agent, and I can just tell it what to do. I say an agent that takes a bunch of invoices and summarizes the totals as a table or something like that. I'm not going to actually run this because this takes about 30 seconds to a minute, and I'm sure you don't want to just sit there and watch it as it does it. But what's interesting here is I can just tell it sort of the high level idea of what I want it to do, and I can also tell it I want you to not take data from anywhere. I just want you to take data from my inbox, just mine, just personal to me, and I want you to take data from Salesforce and say OneDrive. So I'm going to give the agent, for which the description I've given right here is access to those three sources. I hit create, and it's going to start working. It's going to start figuring out what those instructions I need to do, how I'm going to wire in those data sources. But rather than wait for that to complete, I'll just jump to a finished version. I give it a little bit more. This is the instruction I give it here. And what it came up with is a hierarchical agent. I've got sort of the controller agent, the orchestrating agent that I've highlighted at the top here, and it has three sub agents: a summarize invoice, extract invoice data, and validate invoice data agents. Each one of those is specialized in a different role. If I click on one of them, for example, the validate invoice data, AI has come up with a role, the expectations around the output, the model that's going to be using, data connectors it needs to use, and so on. All of that has been figured out for me. And of course, at this point, I can go in and edit if I want. But rather than edit it, let us just use it. So we will jump in to the invoice generation. So imagine I've just typed in 3 sentences. I've told it what data to connect to, and now I'm going to upload a couple of invoice PDFs. Hit enter too quickly and only uploaded one. So I've uploaded 2 invoices, and then I kick it off. And so what's happening is that orchestrator at the top is taking them and figuring out how to get all of its sort of team that sits under it to start doing their specialized tasks. Each invoice is processed, and the agents start working. Now, this might take a minute or not. Ready to go. So it's now summarized. I've got 2 invoices. It's giving me the total amount from each one, the currency, a description, the date on them, and so on. So this is the output that I had asked for, and it was able to orchestrate that across a number of agents. But the key thing I wanted to point out here is just the simplicity of being able to, with a few sentences, describe what could make my job better. Of AI, help me create that agent, help me connect it to the data sources that matter, and then make it available through a pane of glass, like I'm seeing here in Gemini Enterprise, as an agent that I can use again and again every day. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic back to Sergey.
Thank you, Rob. So those are some great examples of how Gemini Enterprise, which, as Rob pointed out, Google sees as kind of an operating system for agents. So those are great use cases for how you can set up a low-code agent. Um, Now, what I will demo next is essentially an agent that we had developed that is the not so low code version. So essentially, with Gemini Enterprise, you not only have the option to create low code agents and sort of promote them to be shared across your organization, but if it so happens that the task that you would like to do, for whatever reason, lies outside of the data storage or systems that Gemini Enterprise can readily interface with, you can always design your own AI agent that does some tasks or leverages access in a particular way that isn't easily achieved with the low code options. Now, the Google Cloud Platform offers ADK, the Agent Development Kit, as well as the Agent Engine, as features that allow developers to essentially build agents readily from a lot of kind of modular pieces of software that can be plugged right in and make the development process quite easy. And the agent engine makes the deployment process easy. And as Rob had earlier pointed out, there are a number of concerns that need to be taken care of when developing agents, such as the testing, the logging, the security. And so if you are doing custom agent development outside of a system like Gemini Enterprise, what the Google Cloud Platform, with its Vertex AI sort of ecosystem of products and services, does provide is a means of doing just that. So if the process you're looking to automate is a bit more complex, requires access to systems that are not easily plugged into Gemini Enterprise out of the box, then you can do that path. So as a demo, um, what um, we at Improving have done is just to kind of give a flavor of what this might look like is so the federal government of Canada has an open data portal, which contains some 46,000 records. Um, and it does have a search UI. However, it is more of an old school kind of keyword driven system. So if you type something like, I'm interested in crime statistics in Toronto, you get zero records. Now you can sort of struggle with it, or you could leverage the power of um, AI to make the process a lot less painful. Um, now, apologies. Um, so the demo that we developed is an open data portal search agent. Essentially, what it will do is take your natural language query and it analyzes it for keywords and it is aware of the keywords catalog that is used to index the open data platform. And in the back, it will have a number of these sub-agents that do these tasks. So they extract keywords out of a query that are potentially relevant, then build a query that works a lot better with the open data portal. And then when they receive the results, it also has a relevance filter where it will, based on, implied context. So you can type in a fairly rich query, and the agent will take all of that into account and kind of prioritize and filter the results. So basically, when it returns, it says, "Hey, I found some relevant data sets. Here's the three most relevant ones." Um, and as we could see, it sort of figured out, oh, okay, well, you know, I may not have Toronto, but Toronto is in Ontario. So here you go. And it gives a little snippet saying why it thinks it's relevant. Uh, and you can ask it things like, I would like more information about the second item. Um, and it will switch to a different mode where instead of just doing the search, it essentially looks at what it had returned and then queries the catalog for additional links and information. Um, hmm, let's try that again. Uh, like detail item two. Sometimes live demos do not cooperate. And essentially, what I'm looking for is for it to pull more information. Looks like we might be having, oh, there you go. So as we can see earlier, the incident-based crime statistics by detailed violations. Um, and so it pulled kind of okay, well, the actual data available for this comes in a variety of formats, and you can click through and access these things. So like the supporting document, which is the Statistics Canada page. And then you can do things like I would like you to email me this information to sergey.sherman@proving.com. And the agent is plugged into an email system and is able to essentially extract context and grab that piece of info and throw it over the fence to my email inbox. It does take a moment for email to come through, but here's an example that I did just before the webinar started, and essentially you will get this is a different item, but you can get it in your email. This isn't meant to be sort of it's not the content of the agent itself, but rather to give you an idea that in addition to kind of leveraging the low-code agents for automation of um, tasks that employees might do routinely during the day, it is also possible to integrate other data sources, other tools. This agent, although it seems very simplistic, like I'm just looking for some information out of a database and interrogating it for more detail than sending an email. But these could be other actions. And essentially, what this is meant to demonstrate is improving scalability of leveraging the Google Cloud Platform, Gemini Enterprise, and the Agent Development Kit to provide solutions that could be tailored to your specific context, to basically integrate any sort of systems and whatever requisite security access or other um, technology linking work that needs to happen, to then surface it via Gemini Enterprise and essentially speed up business processes and save money. Now, I believe at this point, we are back to you, Rob, for a little bit more depth on how to think about agentic AI strategy in your organization.
Yeah, great. Just to wrap things up, there's a very deep and detailed conversation to be had around the strategy for really scaling and governing agents as you start um, scaling them across your enterprise. And a few of the points that Sergey and I put up here, things like how do we manage adoption and avoid sprawl, connecting to enterprise truth. How do we ensure quality and trust? For example, how do we monitor and evaluate agents to make sure that the results that we're getting when I'm getting my invoice summarized and that there's that dollar value there, how are we making sure that that's correct and it stays correct? And then the agent continues to be high quality and used well in the organization. How do we secure the agent? How do we make sure that access is controlled accurately? How do we make sure that there is protections against things like prompt injection, which can, people trying to use things maliciously. All of these things are part of a well-established agentic platform like Gemini Enterprise provides answers and solutions for all of these challenges. And we're not going to get into them really today. That's a subject of a future webinar. But one of the things I just want to say before handing it back to Sergey for some final thoughts is just how we can approach from the Google perspective what an AI adoption journey might look like. And so this little diagram shows the stages that we see as important to being able to roll AI out effectively in the enterprise. And stage 0 really is an interesting one. It's really about exciting the folks who are going to be involved. AI can seem sometimes a little bit daunting at the beginning in terms of I don't really know how to use it effectively and so on. But the potential really is there. And so this is the stage that we want to be doing things like defining the vision and the scope and the rollout strategy. Get the early adopters, the team that's going to manage that, and really understand what that minimally viable first deployment looks like on day one. Phase 2, we want to start actually activating. We want to actually start with something that's fairly simple. Just begin leveraging chat. Just have an enterprise grade, data sovereign, powerful chat experience like you have within Gemini Enterprise, and being able to use that not necessarily with agents that you're building on day one, maybe just using some of the pre-built agents like idea generation and deep research, but knowing that those are all grounded in security around your enterprise ideals. Now, before any of that can really be leveraged, you really need that secure cloud foundation, and improving our great set of folks to be able to help you get there. Now, beyond Activate, we start thinking about how do we expand this? How do we start getting even more value? And that's when we start bringing in the other enterprise data connectors, connecting that AI to the enterprise data sources, starting to create and whether it's low code, simple agents like the package one I showed, whether it's a low code, more complex ones like the invoice summarizer that I showed a little bit later, or whether it's a higher code more complex agent like Sergey finished off at the end there, starting to figure out what these agents are that would bring the most value to your organization and really building that AI fluency. And then finally, the last stage is sort of the transformational stage. And this is where we're starting to, once everyone's sort of up there and using that baseline foundational platform and able to get some initial successes, is reimagining how we get our work done. And by scaling the output and transforming the workforce around some of these new capabilities, reimagining how we're spending the time in each day, the types of tasks that are best handed off to an agent because they're relatively repetitive and mundane, and really focusing our time on the higher value tasks and really that transformational step. And what we've noticed is that sort of the value of AI in the enterprise is increasing as you sort of traverse through this adoption journey. And with that, Sergey, I'll hand it back to you for some final thoughts.
Great. Thank you very much, Rob. So yes, I think organizational change management is definitely a very important piece of the AI adoption puzzle. How do you actually get value from all these really cool technologies? And at the end of the day, it's humans using them. And so there's a technology dimension to this, and then there is the um, organizational change piece. So some of the demos that I had shown featured custom UIs that go on top of technology that could also be accessed through kind of out-of-the-box tools like Gemini Enterprise. Sometimes, if you're dealing with an older or less sort of AI savvy workforce, deploying simpler solutions that are easier to use and have a lot of guardrails just to get people comfortable with the idea that certain types of tasks that previously were manual can be automated is a great way to build confidence. And then tools like Gemini Enterprise, so it's I believe, approved for um, use with protected B information as a regionalized version, and I'm fairly sure soon to be available generally. But for the time being, I know that government of Alberta has gone ahead with implementing it, and I've worked with a couple of federal clients who are also looking at leveraging this technology. So it does actually play very well with the federal government and provincial government security standards, and it is a compliant technology that can be deployed in a sort of data sovereign manner. Um, and goes without saying that improving has been working closely with Google on a number of Google Cloud Platform products and tech, and we have quite a bit of experience with deploying AI in the enterprise and helping organizations essentially get their data into these AI systems and then help build products and services that essentially make your business lines more efficient, save money, and provide better services. So with that, thank you very much, Rob, and I think we're at time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye-bye.